Hello and welcome to another episode of VHS Era. Joining me today is Alex Decourville, and today we're going to be talking about another VHS compilation tape, this of the early 90s cult classic Pete and Pete. Thanks for coming on, Alex.
Thanks for having me. And if you heard that in the background, that was the video you sent to me to
Oh,
talk about this. Sorry about that. I thought,
no,
yeah.
it's completely fine. So, Alex, the thing, the funny thing is, I was like a baby when Pete and Pete first premiered, or at least the series proper
Mm-hmm.
itself. Not, I wasn't even alive when when the shorts started first coming out. I think those were like late, like 89, I want to say is the first short, I
Mm-hmm.
believe. Because, yeah, first it was like a series of shorts, and then
Mm-hmm.
they made it into like a long form show. Um, and by the time it ended, I was a toddler. And so craziest thing, by the time um, I came back to the United States because I spent a lot of my early childhood, like halfway across the world in this place in Micronesia. It's a
Mm-hmm.
long story. So I didn't grow up with Pete and Pete in reruns much, or when the show was, or when the show was even airing proper.
Mm-hmm.
Um, s because by the time I moved back to the US, which was 88, 89, Nickelodeon wasn't airing it in reruns as much.
Mm-hmm.
So I've only so personally, while I know it's a called classic, I've only seen some episodes here and there. But as someone who is slightly older than me, and I'm guessing has spent most of their time in the US, I'm guessing you've seen a lot more Pete and Pete than me.
Oh, yes.
And therefore, you're more accustomed and familiar to the show.
Oh, yeah.
So, what was it like growing up with Pete and Pete?
Well, um, I, uh, I forget when I started. It's one of those things where I do remember episodes airing live and airing new, but I don't remember like a time when the show only existed as the shorts. Like I knew of them. I believe that they still occasionally showed them during the when the show was a proper series, but um, I do remember it airing live. Like the I do remember I do have very specific memories of like when Artie left in season 2 and how heartbroken I was at that. I'm young enough to remember like when they would have these grown up guest stars on the show and just be like, oh, who's that guy? Like it's just so funny thinking back to how I saw like Iggy Pop and Steve Buscemi, and it's like and like I know who they are now, and it's like, man, I saw these people as a kid. I don't remember. I remember not knowing who they were on the when I watched them on Pete and Pete. But yeah, it was definitely a big influence on. It's probably no surprise that a little show I believe we worked on called Pinheads was heavily influenced by Pete and Pete. This sort of flexible reality. So so it's interesting watching a lot of shows together that had this similar style. Like, I mean, I was growing up on stuff on Pete and Pete, Ren and Stimpy, and even now realizing that that earlier episodes of Rugrats were smarter than some people might think looking back on it. So yeah, that was interesting. So that was definitely interesting. Like I didn't discover the Wonder Years until later. I just knew of it as that show that had the Joe Cocker song. That's how I thought of it for ages. So I didn't see a lot of that stuff. So for me, it was interesting seeing this show with like absurd humor. And I was at the age where I definitely identified more with Little Pete. So, I had this show with absurd humor where I could identify with the characters. So it was fun to see that. And I think that's one of the reasons I latched to it so much as a kid.
Yeah. Now, besides, Pinheads, of course, would you say that Pete and Pete and shows similar to it, like styled your humor in general?
Oh, yes, I definitely think that had a big influence on my humor. And I think part of it is just the fact that it was weird and eccentric and had sort of a slice of life. Like, I think about so many episodes that spoke to me as a kid. There were episodes about bedtime. There's an episode that dealt with the death of pets, and not at one episode specifically talking about both the death of pets and having difficulty communicating with your parents. So I definitely feel like that influenced a lot of my humor, like having this ability to like look at normal everyday things with this bizarre, eccentric take on take on it.
Yeah. And from what I have seen of Pete and Pete, I definitely have seen a few episodes. I think that is sort of what the secret sauce is. What, like, as weird as it seems on the outside, it still does have that relatability factor.
Mm-hmm.
That factor where like kids can relate to the characters and what they're going through, even if the world seems silly and cartoonish
Mm-hmm.
and over the top.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's also, hearing you describe it, I feel like that's one of the things that made it work. Like, um, I talked before about Maria Bamford's Netflix show, um,
Lady Dynamite?
Lady Dynamite. Yeah, that's it. And I remember reading that the reason the show has this eccentric and off the wall tone is because it's actually capturing Maria Bamford's struggle with bipolar. And I kind of feel like Pete and Pete also did that, like the absurdity of it, like capture. It's almost like a kid's view of it, and there's almost like this little satire, like there's there's an element of satire, like some of the strange behavior, like how strange some of the adult behavior seems when you're a kid.
Yeah, like for example, what strange adults would be looking at a podcast? Will be just doing a podcast where they look at a VHS tape.
Right,
Well, we're those strange adults. And we should probably get started because that's what people are here for.
right.
Uh, and just a word of warning, folks. So the so there's two copies of the VHS opening. We're looking at specifically the VHS opening for Pete and Pete School Days. Um, there's two VHS openings, but it was weird because the one that was high quality, there's like no sound. And the one that is like clearly filmed off of somebody's camera has sound. So sorry, folks, but we're gonna have to look at video cam quality today. Please still like and subscribe at the end and watch it. It'll be short. You'll get through it, guys. Yeah, it takes me back to like even if I was, watching most of TV in general at a later date, I still at least remember when that promo was like airing like all the time.
Hmm. Yeah. I watched a video by Company Man where he talked about one of the things that made Nickelodeon successful in the early days, because even I didn't know this, that Nickelodeon got its name, in case you didn't know this, because the early days of the show, like the early days, and you kind of have to look to find this footage, but they actually did have this like old timey silent movie theme, and that's how they got their name. And their promos were like, I wouldn't say Charlie Chaplin, but basically like picture that kind of vibe and mystique to them, and not mystique, but that kind of vibe and imagery to them. And they actually turned their fortunes around when they hired the same marketing guy who basically made MTV successful with all these bright, colorful images. And rewatching some of those promos, it's like, yeah, that is one of the things I like about them. You got these, they're so strange, but they are just so creative as well.
Yeah, it's really the kind of bright, colorful thing that would capture a kid's eye. And, what I am wondering is like the Michigan J. Frog parody. Now, like this Nickelodeon ad, I know for a fact came out before the WB was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if they had a Michigan J. Frog parody because I know that Nickelodeon did air Looney Tunes,
Mm-hmm.
before Cartoon Network became like the Looney Tunes network.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, I remember that.
yeah, so I wonder if that's why they have a Michigan J. Frog uh uh figure in there. But even besides that, honestly, it's just like there's not much to say except, oh yeah, that takes me back, all right. It's bright, it's colorful, the song is catchy.
Oh yeah.
Maybe the images don't quite make sense, but it's a 30-second promo. It doesn't need
Oh
to.
yeah, that doesn't even have some of the really strange ones, like the Shatter Teeth, like the Shatter Teeth puppet Nickelodeon promo or the dogs dancing. Those are some that live rent free in my head.
Um, yeah, what as someone who, grew up a little like later to the 90s, what lives rent free in my head is like the chicken versus the fish promo.
Jerk chicken and fish out of water. Psst, that's me.
I don't know if you
Mhm.
remember that one.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, and like
I bet if
the
I saw it, I'd be like, oh, that
yeah,
line.
and the two little girls like running away from the big giant scary bird and then like eating him.
Here's to heroes. Here's to friends. Here's to dinner.
Oh, and of course, not just cartoons, they're Nicktoons.
Not just cartoons.
Oh, that one I definitely remember.
Yeah, well, let's see if there's anything else we remember on this VHS tape.
How about putting a little Pete in your video library?
The shadow musclehead.
And Big Pete, too, together in Classic Pete's, two of the original adventures of Pete and Pete that put two brothers with the same name on the map. First, it's what we did on our summer vacation when Pete and Pete and their best friend Ellen try to solve the mystery of Mr. Tasty's true identity. REM's Michael Stipe guest stars. Then it's Apocalypse Pete when Little Pete turns a harmless game into the Great Prank War.
Prepare to die! Whoa!
Plus, prepare yourself for Artie aerobics and see why they've never been fit for public viewing until now. It's all part of the Adventures of Pete and Pete, Classic Pete's. Add them to your collection.
You'll thank me for this someday.
So funny that I'm also covering. I saw the TV Glow this month because they showed the Mr. Tasty, and if you've ever seen I Saw the TV Glow, they have Mr. Tasty in that movie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and also funny you mentioned all the adult celebrities that you found out later because they just point them out in the trailer.
You know, I find it hilarious that they singled out Michael Stipe. I might have to cut them some slack because maybe this trailer was made before Steve Buscemi was really famous. Like I believe season one was released simultaneously with around at least around the same time as Reservoir Dogs. So I guess he wouldn't have been that famous. He wasn't really that famous until that movie. But I love that they singled out Michael Stipe, like, and not because Kate Pearson of the B-52s is in the same episode.
Yeah. Yeah,
But it also tracks
you're right.
because Michael Stipe's cameo in that is just absolutely hilarious. Like, you can tell the dude didn't have a lot of acting experience. His hopping way of speaking and his eyebrow twitch just cracked me up whenever I watched that episode.
Yeah, but you're right about Steve Buscemi. I was thinking the same thing. Like they're singling out Michael Stipe, but not Steve Buscemi. Though maybe with Kate Pearson to cut them some slack. REM was like huge in the 90s, and by the B-52s, like they were huge, but more like the 70s and 80s. Like, I mean, I'm not saying they aren't famous, but like it
Yeah,
not like the height of their popularity.
it's definitely one of those things where they were definitely settling into their roles as legacy artists. Like I know they're one of those bands that never quite stopped being popular, but they also they never exactly stuck, but they weren't exactly hit makers by then. But I don't know. I mean, they were big enough to be in the Flintstones movie.
Well, then again, the Flintstones movie had like every character actor in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like one of those movies that you're basically doing the Leo point at anytime you watch it. Oh, Richard Mole. Oh, Harvey Korman's voice.
Yeah.
But speaking of the promo itself, it's the kind of thing you'd see on Nickelodeon, just a pretty regular 90s VHS promo, but it captures the vibe of the show fairly nicely.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't know, like trying to think like it captures, the absurdity and the character as well. And I don't know, do you have any like real strong thoughts on that promo?
I thought it was a solid promo. I mean, it definitely like I thought that they did a good job of highlighting the like some of the action of some of those episodes. Because what we did on our summer vacation is almost a hard episode to summarize because it's almost like it feels like one of those vignette episodes. Like it has the overarching story of them trying to find Mr. Tasty, but it has all these vignettes. It's almost like a mini version of Tiny Toons, How I Spent My Summer Vacation.
Yeah, yeah, so oh, speaking of Tiny Toons, How I Spent My Summer Vacation, I always thought that was weird. Like they used to play Tiny Toons on Nickelodeon back in the 90s. Then vaguely remember once in the late 90s, they played Tiny Toons How I Spent My Summer Vacation when they weren't even airing the show proper anymore.
Hmm.
I like vaguely remember that.
Hmm. Yeah, if
Oh,
I
and then they brought back the show like in the early 2000s for a bit.
mhm. Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, but shall we go on to the next promo?
Yes.
Ready for an explanation?
Ready as ever.
Okay, Clarissa goes from
Got it all under control.
to
This is a nightmare.
in Enslaved by the Bell. Two academic episodes of Nickelodeon's Clarissa Explains It All.
You've got to see this.
Clarissa explains why school plays are hazardous to your health
Actors are so temperamental.
and why school pictures are hazardous to your image.
Bitch.
Plus, she stars in brand new stuff never seen anywhere before.
Can't believe this has turned into such a big deal.
But why go on? After all, Clarissa explains things better than anybody. Enslaved by the Bell. Two colorful episodes, one Clarissa take. Available from Nickelodeon Home Video.
So I'm intrigued by never before seen footage being set in a school.
Hmm.
Because did Clarissa ever even leave the house? It
Yeah, that's one of the things that was interesting about Clarissa. Outside of cutaway gags, very few, like, I mean, the show is almost like a precursor to Titus, in that like almost every episode was centralized in one location, but there were all these cutaway gags that were away from the location. I know there are a few episodes that leave the house. Like there's the episode where Ferguson gets his own show. There's the game show episode. There's there's the one where Clarissa falls in love with that weatherman. But yeah, the lion's share of the series was like episodes inside the house and a lot of cutaway gags of like that would show her at school, or fantasy sequences and stuff like that.
Yeah, I will say that speaking of the promo though, in and of itself, like the Pete and Pete promo, it
Mm-hmm.
does capture the quirky hip essence of the show
Mm-hmm.
fairly well, especially with the like little cutaways of like the look
Mm-hmm.
how embarrassing my mom and dad looked in their yearbook
Mm-hmm.
photos. Like again, like the Pete and Pete promo, it isn't false advertising. From what I've seen of Clarissa, which I'll admit isn't a ton, because
Mm-hmm.
by the time I remember watching Nickelodeon, I don't think they were really showing reruns much anymore. If
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
anything, it feels like it was only kind of like done on special occasions, or Melissa Joan Hart would go on to do some Nick event and
Right.
say, "Hey kids, remember I used to be on Nickelodeon and now
Yeah.
I'm Sabrina." So it's like I haven't seen the show much. From what I have seen, that feels like Clarissa to me.
Yeah. Clarissa Explains It All definitely. I've actually watched it because you can watch it on Paramount Plus if you would like to dive into that well. But I still think it's a fun show to watch. I don't know if it's going to if it's going to cut the same way as for someone who didn't grow up watching it, but I still think it's a fun show to watch. I mean, it's colorful, it's energetic, it is such a perfect time capsule of that era when the 80s was still the not or excuse I have that backwards. The 90s was still the 80s. Um, I don't think I quite realized this as a kid, but one of the things I really liked about that, one of the things I like about that show, I think I subconsciously liked this as a kid, that Clarissa was like hip. She was more or less depicted as someone who was hip and with it, but she still liked video games and occasionally talked about stuff like Star Trek, and it's like, wow, that for when that show was made, that's kind of surprising.
Yeah, I will also say though that even if I didn't really grow up on Clarissa. I did grow up on at least the first like few seasons of Sabrina,
Hmm.
because my family and I actually used to watch TGIF in like the late 90s, early
Hmm.
thousands. So like I grew up on everything up to the years she moved to the WB, and then like pretty much most of the world, I stopped paying attention to Sabrina after that point.
Yeah, I kind of forget when I disconnected because I know there was a while when I was into TGIF. I mean, I just loved that. Like, I loved watching Step by Step. I loved watching Sabrina. I loved watching Teen Angel, which as a kid I loved, but I didn't quite realize it was a total Sabrina ripoff. Boy Meets World. I forget exactly when I petered off though, because I was a pretty big fan of those shows, but for some reason when I was a kid, I would just there were certain shows that even if I was a fan, I would just stop watching for whatever reason.
Yeah, I I think like TGIF ended in like
Hmm.
I mean the first run ended in like 2000, and I think that's kind of when my family stopped watching it like Friday
Hmm.
nights, and
Hmm.
it kind of got, I think they brought it back a few years later, but
Oh yeah, I
we
was
didn't go
what
back.
I forget who made this, but I do remember watching at least one video about the failed attempt at bringing back a TGIF revival.
Yeah, but let's see if the next promo is for another iconic Nickelodeon show.
Presenting four new Nickelodeon tapes you can't watch because they're made for listening. It's Nickelodeon on audio cassette. Peanut Butter Jam. 10 nutty novelty hits with a new Nick spin.
Splish splash, I was taking a bath. All about a Saturday night.
Songs from the backseat. Road music for the whole family.
I must go number one before my song is done.
For the first time, Clarissa explains it all in song.
Na, 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 na. Na, 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 na.
And from the Midnight Society, four brand new stories that are positively chillifying.
The place was totally creepy. Plus, there was that weird locked door at the bottom of the cellar stairs.
Four new audio cassettes, 100% Nickelodeon. Keep an ear out for them at your favorite store.
Well, that was not technically for an iconic Nickelodeon show.
Hmm.
That was also the last preview on the VHS already. I know it's a bit shorter than most VHSs, but I will say that is kind of a cute little marketing gimmick. Hey, let's sell this CD that's our songs based off of kids stuff that kids will relate to.
Yeah, I if you didn't see it, I was grinning throughout that whole thing because that was another nostalgia trip. I didn't have any of those tapes as a kid, but I probably would have liked them. But it's like, oh man, I didn't have those specific tapes, but I had similar tapes. Like I remember we were talking about Tiny Toons a second ago. They actually had a Tiny Toons cassette that was like the characters of Tiny Toons singing songs that would have been relevant to them. They were all covers naturally, like Shirley sang Daydream by Love and Spoonful, and of course Dizzy had Dizzy by Tommy Rowe.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that specific one, but I do know that was like a huge marketing thing,
Hmm.
getting like making it look like fictional characters did like covers of popular
Hmm.
songs. The Simpsons had like The
Oh
Simpsons
yes.
Sing the Blues.
Hmm.
So this kind of falls a bit in line with that. I mean, it's like original songs, but it is sort of like still silly songs for kids to
Hmm.
listen to, or songs that are loosely based on popular Nickelodeon shows at the time, like Clarissa and Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Hmm.
I am one kind of wondering about the Are You Afraid of the Dark one.
Yeah, I'm a little curious about that one too, because it sounds like those weren't like soundtracks or songs, that they were like audio adventures, which I'm a little curious about.
Yeah, I wonder if it's selling on eBay, cross your fingers. Uh, but yeah, again, it's still like I respect the hustle. Hey,
Hmm.
sell a CD full of things kids can relate to or silly things kids can laugh at. And pair it with two CDs of songs related to two of our hit live action shows.
Hmm.
No
Yeah,
Nicktoon representation on this VHS.
yeah, I noticed that. Kind of unusual.
Yeah, especially seen as it's the VHS for something that is arguably a live action cartoon.
Hmm. Right. Also, the other soundtrack I had that was like that was, as a kid, I had Dinosaur Big Songs, which I still have the poster for. Uh, there are two things that stick in my mind about that. One, it was the first Abbey Road parody I ever saw, even before I knew what Abbey Road was. And two, I remember my mom being a big fan of the I'm the Mama song because she could sing that. The one song from that album that still lives rent free in my head.
Think that's the one song that lives rent free in many people's head.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that was the end of the show, and now it's the age-old question. Sit through the previews or skip to the feature. It honestly is a pretty nostalgic set of promos. It feels like sitting through a commercial break you'd find on Nickelodeon. Just cutting to like promos for Nickelodeon stuff, not the other boring commercials you might
Right,
find. So yeah,
right.
and it's a short experience, so yeah, sit through the previews.
Yeah, I'd sit through the previews just for the trip down memory lane. I mean, I that weird soundtrack thing is something that, like, if I had the VHS, I could totally see myself rewinding it. Like, what is all on that tape?
Well, thank God you're a child of the 90s and not a child of now because you sound like you'd be one of those children who'd listen to Coco Melon a lot. But but actually, in all seriousness, uh, what have you got going on?
Well, my movie Science Boys High School Reunion, currently streaming as of this recording, it's on Amazon behind a paywall, but if you want to watch it for free, you can watch it on Zumo, that's XUMO, and you can find it on YouTube through the Tenna TV channel. Plus, I'm currently in post production for my movie The Buddy System, which, if you look it up on Facebook, we gave it this. We pulled up prints and gave it this impronounceable title, so The Buddy System is a subtitle. And one reason I want to bring that up is because it does have that Pete and Pete style, where it's like a lot of absurd comedy, a lot of flexible reality humor, but there's some heart to it.
Good. And now, next time, I'm not sure what I'm going to do for VHS era, but I do have a big announcement, which is that the I Saw the TV Glow episode of Everyone's a Critic is going to be a two-parter with two different guests as they give their own response to the film. We'll see you then.
It's mighty strange. You looking happily.